Hey, it's Joey Thurman. I'm excited to bring you Season 2 of the Fad or Future podcast. We live in a world where information is everywhere, easy to access, and sometimes not always accurate, especially in the health and wellness space, which is exactly why I created this show. There's two sides to every story, and I'm here to present both and let you decide, is it a fad or is it the future? Health fads come and go, but the science behind them is what makes them work. Or fail. I'm bringing the experts to you and putting the facts on the table so you can decide how and where to put your efforts in your own personal health and wellness journey. Thank you to Third Wheel Podcast Studio in LA for the great editing work on our show every week. If you're ever in LA and need a studio to use, they have full audio and video capabilities and awesome engineers. They also have a Seattle location coming soon. And of course, if you're just looking for production and editing, they have you covered there too. Check them out online at thirdwheelpodcaststudio.com. Oh, I bet you're stressed out when you're listening to this right now. What's up? It's Joey Thurman. Here's another episode of the Fad or Future podcast. Do you want to stimulate your vagus nerve? Do you want to feel better? Do you want to have less stress? Do you just want to lay down and put some earphones in, or don't call them headphones? I'm with Amy Brannon, one of the heads of Neuvana. Now, NeuvanaLife, Neuvana, you're a vagus nerve stimulator. We're going to get all into that. Former nurse and just now, developing professional athletes maybe with your kids, as we were talking about ahead of time.
We would like to think so, yeah.
Amy, thanks for coming on. As I said before, you're with Neuvana. Can you tell me a little bit about your company?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks, Joey, for having me. I'm looking forward to it. I think we're going to have fun. So Neuvana is a company that we started about 5 years ago, and this is all surrounding technology that's in the neurostimulation space. Mm-hmm. So specifically vagus nerve stimulation, which you mentioned. And for people who don't know, the vagus nerve is the longest cranial nerve in the body. It has the most to do with your rest and digest side of your nervous system. Mm-hmm. Right. Now, so this, go ahead.
Yeah. What is your, let's tell people about your background first before we get into the weeds of it. How are you involved with it, and what makes you qualified essentially, to tell people about their stress and vagus nerve?
Oh, such a great question. So as far as my background, I've been a nurse, a registered nurse for over 20 years, and most of my experience is actually hospital-based. So I started off, worked in high acuity areas, and then all ICU and procedural areas. So I've done everything from trauma, surgery, cardiac, cath lab, all of those things. And most recently, I was in administration, so I was able to really put together the programs in the hospital to treat illness. So in that role, I was involved frequently, of course, with physicians, worked very closely with a cardiac surgeon who is the primary founder of our company. He has also a mechanical engineering degree and is an inventor. He's got over 100 patents. He develops mostly medical devices. But
so he's a really dumb guy.
Really dumb.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Exhausting. It's, boring to talk to him. But he's, and he's super eager, is full of so much energy, and we would talk all the time. And I'm sort of a closet engineer, I guess. Mm-hmm. I just don't quite have the math skills to do that. So he worked with me, and he said, this is something I'd like you to be involved in, just for my operational experience in the hospital, and also understanding how disease affects the human body. Mm.
Okay. And you also, you have a degree in psych as well, right?
I do.
Okay.
Yep.
So that goes into this. Okay.
Yes.
So for anybody listening to this podcast, you guys know I'm a human guinea pig. And I heard about your product, I don't know, maybe a year ago. It's been a while. And finally, once I decided to start it, I'm like, what is this thing? I put it in my ears, and it's supposed to relax me. And full disclosure, they gifted me one of these, so I did not purchase it. What's the retail price? $400?
Yes.
Okay, $400. NeuvanaLife, correct?
Yes,
Okay,
NeuvanaLife.com.
NeuvanaLife.com. Okay, you can use Joey Thurman Fit for an excellent gift. So I got this thing, and I started putting this in my ears, and I spray basically like what's like, kind of like contact solution on the
Hmm.
earbuds, and I started using this thing at night. Why was I doing that? What is the premise behind this? Well, and then we'll talk about the vagus nerve, and then I want to get into some practical tips for people because $400 is a lot of money for a lot of
It is.
people. But also,
Yep.
I don't want people to think that hey, you have to go out and purchase this. By all means, if you want to, go ahead and do so. And then you can make your own decision if this is going to help you. But there is going to be some practical tips that we're going to go over that can help you with your stress and your sleep and everything else.
Right. Yeah. All of that is so important. And, I think anytime you talk about money that's in those multiple hundreds of dollars, it's an intentional choice,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's an intentional purchase. You really put thought behind it, and we do commit to a money back guarantee. So we give people time to try it out, see if it works for them. So aside from that, you asked why you do it.
Mm-hmm.
So to to clarify, this is actual small, gentle electrical stimulation. So it's through a set of earbuds, and the electrical stim travels through the left earbud and stimulates a branch of the vagus nerve. And that's that rest and digest side of your nervous system, right? So you have the fight or flight, which is I've been powering through all day. I had to get through my workout. I had to get the kids to school or home, virtual learning or
Yeah.
whatever is going on. Plus, on top of that, I'm working and have to take care of a family or take care of myself, whatever is going on, right? So what's happening is your sympathetic nervous system is so keyed up, and we're just not practicing ways to downregulate that
Mm-hmm.
and upregulate the relaxed side. So these little micropulses act to do that. And like you said, you're using it before you go to bed. That's prime for being able to put your brain in a more balanced state and kind of center you up a little bit so that your brain is ready for sleep.
Yeah. And for me, when I started using this thing, and these impulses, it's not like you're feeling a shock or anything in your brain,
Mhm.
and you're not like I've used some other devices where it's almost like I had a couple glasses of wine. It was kind of interesting. It's not like that. Um, there's different modes, and the one I use is kind of has like a humming to it the whole
Mhm.
time. And then there's ones that connect to your microphone, and the other ones that you listen to different things. So I started using this because I'm stressed out, like probably 99% of people listening to this podcast right now. But I also struggle with anxiety and severe depression at times. So I started using this to essentially try to help me get to sleep more, because that's one of the things like that I know from a health and fitness professional. If I prioritize my sleep, that's going to be the number one right there, and keep me sleep and good quality sleep. So I did find when I was using this several days at night that I just slept better.
Mhm.
And can you speak to that a little bit? Because I know that when we talked prior, you said it helped with that slow wave sleep. And how does it specifically do that?
Well, that in particular, it's what we don't have is, I'll kind of back up a little bit.
Uh huh.
So specifically, slow wave sleep, I'll translate that more to deep sleep versus REM sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And what we know from literature is that vagus nerve stimulation will actually improve deep sleep, and it can also improve and increase REM sleep. And your restorative sleep is really what you need. So if you use any kind of sleep tracker or anything like that, and you look at it and you go, holy cow, I really thought I slept well. I went to bed on time. I did all my little routine, but it looks like I was awake half the night, or I was in light sleep for half the night. Or, what I've noticed is my resting heart rate didn't go down as low as it normally would.
Mm-hmm.
So I must be super stressed out. I'm not gearing down enough. So what vagus nerve stimulation does is it releases these neurotransmitters in your brain. These are acetylcholine, um, norepinephrine, and then serotonin, which even though it generally comes from the gut, that transmission highway is the vagus nerve.
Hmm.
So gut to brain is the vagus nerve. So that helps quiet down all this noise in the brain, shuts down the annoying neurotransmitters that'll keep you awake,
Sure.
and kicks up these other ones.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot now coming out on vagus nerve stimulation, and there's a bunch of different ways to people could try to do this. You know, the humming and deep breathing and certain types of singing. Have you guys looked at the stimulation of your device versus doing one of these other kind of low tech type things?
Not head to head in a formal trial or anything like that.
Mm,
We are actually getting ready to do a large scale study. So once we start recruiting, then we can announce it in a more formal way.
yeah.
But we are going to go head to head with meditation and mindfulness practices. So 3 parallel tracks, and we're really excited about that. What we do know is the studies that are out there about vagus nerve stimulation, you know, they'll do vagus nerve stimulation under functional MRI. So that's where, they'll have somebody go ahead and clip something to their ear or use a device like ours, transmit the electrical signal, and watch the brain areas light up on screen. So they can see that this type of vagus nerve stimulation is instantaneous. So we know that. Um, I don't know if the others are. I would assume that that they're close,
Right.
but things like meditation actually takes a lot of practice and typically takes some sort of a routine and maybe even coaching to get you to a point where you get that deepness of relaxation.
Right. So, I mean, so this is, you just kind of put this on and
Hmm.
go, and you don't really need to think about it. And I mean, I literally today, my dad texted me and he's like, "Hey, in all of your research, have you found any supplements to help with stress?" And Dad, if you listen to this, I love you.
Hmm.
But he really is the average American. He's like,
Hmm.
what can we do to make this quick? So I did text him like, okay, so here's some breathing techniques, and
Yeah.
how's your sleep, and you can do some things like maybe rhodiola or low level lithium, or like stuff like that. And I could see that this would be something that maybe he should look into, because a lot of people just don't want to take the time. And meditation, yeah, I mean, you could sit there and say, I'm going to sit and do nothing for 5 minutes or
Hmm.
10 minutes and think about how my toes all the way up to my head and waves and all this sort of shit. But honestly, like, people can't do that nowadays. We don't have an attention span. So I've tried to do it. The only way I can do it is if it's a guided meditation.
Hmm.
And for me, it's just like I need to sit down, I need to turn on YouTube or some sort of guided meditation, and it's 20 or 30 minutes, and I can't really do anything else while I'm still thinking about what else I should be doing. So the art of doing nothing is very hard. So I could see, as far as most individuals, that putting something in your ears and turning this on is going to be extremely, extremely beneficial.
Yeah, I think that you said something in that really resonates. And we talk to customers every day. We talk to people who are either maybe they're just interested in the technology, maybe they want to solve their own problem, whatever it is, whether they have our device or not. We talk to people every day who are looking to solve something.
Mm-hmm.
And what's one of the things that I've seen as a nurse over a couple of decades is too many times people wait until there's a problem to solve.
Mm.
So, for instance, I in my personal life, I have family members who for years ignored their health, would bring their own food to visit because our food was too healthy. Okay, so this is not normally how that goes, right? You probably have the opposite experience where you have
Yeah.
to carry your own food because you need to have certain nutrients, right?
Yeah. Right.
Well, now in between those two family members, one has had significant health issues over the last several years, and the other is now bedridden, and they are desperately trying to solve a problem. And if you look back, if you're in that type of situation, I bet you look back and you say, man, if I had adopted a routine of any kind, that involved 5 to 20 minutes a day that could have prevented this, I would have done it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I'm not saying that's not a blanket statement for
Right.
every person's issues, not by any means. It's just there are so many preventable illnesses, so many preventable conditions, and we wait until we have them to fix them.
Yeah. And that's really the nature of, I mean, I always say Americans, but I mean, it seems like almost worldwide now. I mean, you can go to different countries, and my wife's family is from Greece, and you see them smoking like chimneys, and they're still smoking, and the young people, as they say. And I say, and I say there's a backademic in Greece. Like you see people that are like my age or younger, and they look great from the front, and they turn around and like, you haven't been doing any posterior chain work whatsoever. Like your hamstrings and your back, like unless they play sports, right? Because that's
Right.
what they don't do anything. And then the first year we went there was, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, and we'd go for a run, and maybe we see 1 or 2 people running, and then everybody else would look at us funny. And then the next year you saw like a few more and a few more the next year. But we always looked at like funny, like when I was like, we bring the bands out and doing pull-ups, because that's just not something they do. Obviously they're healthier in other ways, but it's really interesting is until something happens. And I have lots of family members. I've got an uncle who's 400 pounds, and I imagine once there's some sort of issue, then they're probably going to go try to fix that. And why do you think that is? I mean, you're dealing with people every single day. You've been in the medical industry for a long time. Do you have a solution for that? Do you have any sort of insight?
I think the insight is it's human behavior,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I used to say when Twitter first came out, I'm like, Twitter is training all of us on how long our conversations can be.
What was it,
And
40? Was it 40 characters or
I think it
70? It
was
was,
140 characters, right?
yeah.
Or
Okay.
maybe 70 when it
I think
first came
when it
out.
first came out, it was like half, and then they doubled it. Like,
Yeah,
oh man, I have to read for 2 more seconds.
right. So now I have to tell my husband now because he likes to voice text.
Mm-hmm.
So the text actually you have to scroll on the phone to get through the whole thing. So I'll say, remember the original intent of this was this much.
Right.
But, I think that we're all trained for this instant gratification. Amazon trained us, Twitter trained us, Netflix. When I was a kid, we had 3 channels. You had to
Mm-hmm.
wait 1 week for your next show, blah, 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 right?
Right.
We've all heard it.
Yeah.
But that's just the bottom line. That's reality now. I'm not angry about it. We all have to figure out how to live in this environment. And if our habits are such that we're not willing to put in time, then you have to realize what the risk is to that. So in your industry, you're not just, and I follow you, so I know that you're not just focused on the physical health. You
Right.
are focused on the total body, the total mind, spiritual, the whole bit. It all comes together. And I'm sure that you deal with people that say, no, but what's the fast way?
Mm-hmm.
There's
Yeah.
no fast way.
There really isn't. I tell people this is not a race to the finish.
Mhm.
And I'm working on a concept for my second book. So I'm not going to completely give it away, but we always want to stay in that race, right? Like we want to be in the race. We're most of us are just competing with getting to the starting line. Like well, you gotta get in that race first. And I mean, there was a New York Times article published several years ago about the minimum effective dose of exercise and how you can live longer. It was something like, it was like 30 minutes of low level physical activity brought down. And I can't remember the exact stats, but your risk of premature death by like 19%. It was like walking. And we're not even talking about aesthetics. And like, well,
Right.
when I read that, I'm thinking, that is easy to do. Are you kidding me? But people
Right.
just don't do that. And then it's not that sitting is the new smoking and all that sort of shit. Like sitting wrong is the new smoking. How many times have
Yes.
you sat down like a child or crossed your knees or done a butterfly or like sat down in a 90-90? And you're right. It's like all of these things just get like too easy for us. I even make my son now, when he watches YouTube, and before he was born, like, oh, I can't watch any TV whatsoever. But sometimes
Nice.
sometimes mom and dad just need a fucking break. So like,
Sometimes you do.
we'll just turn on YouTube, and Blippy, however annoying he is, sorry Blippy, if you listen to the podcast, you're making a ton of money. We turn that on, and then 10 minutes in, an ad will come on, and he'll like, Baba, which is dad in Greek. He's like, ad. I'm like, you're watching this ad. So I'll sit and make him watch it for 15 seconds, and then he can skip the ad, because I'm just trying not to have this instant gratification stuff,
Right.
So because that's
It's
what
hard.
we're programmed. It's really hard.
Right.
So, I mean, what have you seen people when they started using your device? Do you think that all of their behaviors change? Are they just sleeping better? I mean, is this something where it's kind of like a snowball effect? Like, hey, all of a sudden I started using Nuvana. I started, activating my vagus nerve, and people look that up. You can do meditation, you can do deep breathing, diaphragmatic breathing. You can lay on a foam roller and hum. You can do all that sort of stuff. But have you seen any cyclical effect of individuals using this, and it's affecting the rest of their day and their life?
Yes, actually. So, and I'll mention that we've had people call and say, this doesn't work, right? It doesn't work for me. And then we engage in a conversation. Tell me how you tried it. We'll try to coach through. Well, I used it one time and it really didn't do anything for me. I don't feel calmer. So the answer to that is, while there are a population of people who may feel effects right away from vagus nerve stimulation, and like you mentioned, any way you stimulate the vagus nerve, you might feel it right away. Humming, meditation, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the more out of balance you are, meaning the more sympathetic heavy or the sympathetic dominant your nervous system is versus parasympathetic, which is that rest, chill out, relax, digest side, then you're going to feel it more pronounced right away. If you're kind of in the middle, or you're actually like yourself, you're probably, mostly balanced, you get good sleep, I know you're stressed out, but probably
Nothing about me is balanced. I am not.
Good to know.
No, I have been sleeping better since we moved into my in-laws. Actually, my wife and son go in a different room, and they sleep in there because there's no gate. This is too much information, but anyways, there's no gate on the stairs, and he can get out. So like,
yeah, it's scary.
I go in my own room, and I sleep in my own room for like
a baby,
8 or 9 hours.
Nice.
Yes, I miss sleeping next to my wife, but I like 8 hours of sleep. So carry on.
So that's
okay,
good.
Okay. Go ahead.
But, the reality is that there are people that need daily doses, and we'll call them doses or sessions or what have you, in order to start toning the vagus nerve. So like a muscle, the nervous system sometimes has to be tuned up, toned up, and this is what happens. So there's a study out of the University of Leeds, which is in England. They do a lot of work with TVNS, and they stimulate a part of the ear that's exactly the part that we stimulate. We love their study. And they actually targeted people 55 and over, which they targeted that group because typically your autonomic nervous system, that automatic side, starts wearing out by 55. So you kind of have to do a little bit more to keep it in check. So for 2 weeks, they did daily doses twice a day with TVNS, and they found improved sleep, quality of life, and mood by significant amounts. So I think that, when you look at it just from a well-being standpoint, if you get better sleep, if you can cut down the effects of your stress. All right. So in my life, I have 3 kids, right? They're teenagers, like you mentioned, they're athletes. So there's a lot of running around. I'm, married. My husband is a wonderful man, but, as a family, we have a lot to do. And I help run this company and have other family members as well, right? So I'm not trimming any of that. So when people say get rid of your stress, that's not a thing. It's just not. You can live in a box. But in general, just being able to manage your body's response to the stress involves practice. So vagus nerve stimulation, whether it's your meditation, humming, electricity, like we use these small micropulses, then do something and add to that a practice where you're saying, this is how I'm going to feel. So once you get to that calm state, your brain recognizes it and can get there faster the next time.
I mean,
Does that make sense?
that's almost like any bodily system. For
Mm-hmm.
people to break it down, when you take a medication, for example, often that medication, unless it's like a Tylenol or something where it's a pain reliever and you're blocking something, it's
Mm-hmm.
not going to be immediate. So like antidepressants or all these other different medications, after weeks of taking it, then they say it builds up in your system. So I mean, that's the same way that you could look at this. You could look at exercise. You could look at eating well. I mean, you're not going to go on like a 5-day detox and fix every problem you've ever had from eating
Mm-hmm.
crap standard American diet. It's just not going to happen. So doing this and training your body, or you think you're going to be able to go down into the full splits when you haven't done gymnastics in 20 years, it's just not going to happen. You're going to tear your adductor and you're going to be in a lot of pain and you don't want to go to the hospital right now. So, I mean, that's the thing. Just people think that they can just do this right away. And this makes a ton of sense, whether it's using your product or doing like a meditation practice or a
Mm-hmm.
yoga or that breathing or box breathing, or even like look up left nostril breathing, close your right nostril. But I tell you right now, I could tell how many other people listening to this could close their right nostril and do more left nostril breathing. It'll help their parasympathetic nervous system. And most people aren't going to do it. You're just closing your right nostril and breathing in and out. Like, my God. I mean, it's not COVID friendly if you've got snot or a booger in there, but like, that's the thing. Like, you have to practice this sort of stuff. Like, it drives me crazy that I even something as simple as your device, you turn it on and you put it in your ears.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that's
and
it.
that is the reason we created it like this. So, I said at the beginning that Dr. Cartledge has done numerous medical devices, right? He's invented and created these brilliant implantable devices and other such things, right? Now, this was important because while he really focused on wanting to create a consumer product, it needed to make sense, be portable, friendly, consumer friendly, compact. So this is something where I don't have a headband on at my desk if I'm stressed out or I need to really focus on getting a report out. That's the times that I'll use this at work.
Yeah.
So, I don't have a headband on or some strange, AR or VR, where I've got the Oculus on my head and hold on just a minute, I need
Right.
a few minutes to unwind. I can do that and almost multitask my relaxation. And sometimes, yeah, I'll push away from the desk and just enjoy the few minutes. Sometimes I can just drive right through and say, okay, I'm going to keep this going while I'm typing this out, and it helps with focus as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of one thing, there's something called like memory consolidation as well.
Mm-hmm.
And where people, and I've done a lot of podcasts, so this is how I know things. Dr. Andrew Huberman, listen to his Stanford neuroscientist. Like, really, you may be familiar with his work, but very smart guy.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, if you're learning something or if you're trying to study something and then you go to sleep, whether it's a nap or you go to sleep for the evening, that's memory consolidation. And you actually can learn that better. So what I started doing with this device, and I'm not a huge, I mean, we had a phone call weeks ago. Like, I don't like the word biohack, but
Mm-hmm.
I try to be as efficient as possible. So what I have done with this, and this is for me, especially on days when I feel more stressed out and depressed, or I'm like, oh my God, I should have done all this sort of stuff. So I'll put that on, and then maybe I'll read or put on some sort of certification that I was trying to do. And then I will go to sleep shortly after. So I'm trying to kill multiple birds, and don't kill animals. What do you mean? You got it. Yeah. The duck hunt birds. I just aged myself there. So that's, for me, that's the kind of what I feel like it's used best. And because honestly, for me, when I've got so much stuff going on during the day, I don't think about putting in, but this thing is like the size of a hockey puck. I mean, it's small, and I put it in and I'll do some studying, and I'll several days a week. But I have to consciously think about it. And even me, who I've got all of this sort of stuff, and that's the thing is leading to my next question on my tangent as I go on. But people have been listening to this podcast for a while, so they get that I go off on tangents. For me, I've got all this sort of stuff that I'm doing, right? I'm taking all these supplements, I'm doing these workouts, I'm trying to do yoga afterwards, I'm doing some sort of new diet, all of this for the podcast. How do I know what specifically is working for me if there's those 5% of individuals who are crazy like me? Like, how do you know, how do you quantify that?
I don't think you can.
Yeah.
I really don't. I think
That's an honest answer, by the way.
Yeah. So I thought about that because a lot of times for myself, I'll not do vagus nerve stimulation for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So I can sort of go back to whatever my normal state is. And I use a different, I'll use a tracker or something, watch my sleep and see how I'm feeling and just watch different things in my own physiology. And then I reintroduce something. So I'll tell you that exercise, even if it's not the hardest exercise ever, if it's just what you were talking about earlier, a 30-minute walk or several 10, 15-minute walks during the day, if I meet my activity goal or I've been moving all day, I sleep better. Independent of anything else, I sleep better. Now, layer on top of that, this practice, I sleep better. Okay, so it's kind of like if you were to put someone on a, what do you call it? When someone comes into you and they say, I've got stomach issues, and you put them on a diet where you pull things out of their diet and then you reintroduce them.
Elimination diet.
Yes. Okay. So you almost have to do things like that. You start from scratch and then you layer things individually, measure, evaluate. I think that's the only way you're going to know the actual effect of any one thing. And maybe they have a synergistic effect together. But you mentioned something earlier that you'll do this before you're taking a new train course for certification. And I think that's really cool because it's something we didn't discuss before, but University of Maryland published a study. They used our device in a DARPA-funded trial. So DARPA is the defense arm. They do a lot of language learning studies, right? Because it's important for our military and Secret Service and all of that to be able to understand and possibly be fluent in other languages. Mm-hmm. So they used our headphones and delivered VNS before learning Mandarin, so for these training sessions, and they actually had up to a 30% improved rate of uptake in language learning. Yep. So we're working with, there's a couple of other arms of that study that are continuing and expanding from there. So it's really interesting. We say that we're a solution looking for a problem because it really has so many applications. But that's why it's important for people to know sometimes exercise, basic taking care of your brain, however you do it, relax. Use that time because recovery is so important to memory consolidation, neuroplasticity, which is your brain's ability to learn and adapt. You have to have the right environment for that.
Yeah, and that really makes a lot of sense. I think that people, if they started journaling and writing all this stuff down, needed some sort of graph, like what did I do today? And you put a sleep section and a workout section and a nutrition section, and you kind of just checked it off, like what you did. And then you could see, I woke up in the morning, I felt good, or I woke up several times during the evening, or I didn't sleep well, or you're wearing a sleep tracker. You're right. I mean, you're kind of doing an elimination life style, if you will. But I mean, that's really, there's things that are key for me. Is sleep is, I think, is number one for anybody, and that is so overlooked. So doing something like meditation, yoga, getting Nirvana, like that makes a ton of sense. Sleep and exercise for my head. Like I woke up this morning, and this is just a good life tip for anybody in a relationship. I woke up, I felt really depressed, and I went to my wife. I'm like, I don't know what's going on with my head today. And that's the first words I said to her. So right there, she knew that there's something like that. It's not her. There's
Right.
nothing that
Right.
triggered. We didn't get in a fight. So just acknowledging how you're feeling. I'm like, okay. Then I went into problem solving. What can make me feel better? I went to my son, like, hey, Frederick, can I have a hug? And he's 2.5. He's like, no. So didn't get a hug from him.
Okay. Next.
It's okay. I just can't grab him because he'll just like run away. Body autonomy. So I got one later on that made me feel better. But then I told my wife, I said, look, I have to work out. I've got to go do that. So took a couple 100 milligrams of caffeine and some beta alanine and some other supplements to, literally get me pumped up even more. I was in this garage gym for an hour and I felt just so much better. And my mood has been better throughout the day. So I just think that's a really just good tip for people in general, just to be, if we're aware of ourselves and how we're feeling and honest with everybody. Like, you don't need to be like me and put it all over the internet and all that sort of shit. Like at Joey Thurman Fit, if you want to troll me nicely, you don't need to do that. Right. And there is still like, some of my life is very private too, which I understand. Like, you're not going to see my child's face on social media. You're barely going to see my wife. But there are things like, even if you're going to post something on social media, like, talk to your loved one. Is this okay to post this? What do you feel about this? So, and honestly, I've gotten in lots of trouble doing all that sort of stuff without permission and without talking to individuals. So I'm not speaking like I have all the answers, but just going through your head and your daily checklist and how you're feeling at the moment, how you're feeling in the morning, how you're feeling in the evening, and then looking at what has changed or what you have added. Because you're right, like putting these in your ears and getting Nuvana is not going to fix every single problem.
Right.
But
right.
if you can start stimulating that vagus nerve, however you may do it, multiple times a week, maybe multiple times a day, like, you're all going to be different. Like, who goes to counseling or therapy and does one session like, hey, I'm fixed, my marriage is
Who
okay.
eats,
Like, it doesn't happen, right?
Right. Who eats one salad and loses weight?
Yeah. Not
Right.
me.
You do one set of curls and you get the 20-inch biceps, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's what, when I was training people in person, like, wow, you're really expensive. Like, how fast am I to see results? Like, well, not in one session. If you came to me for one session, I'd be $1 million a session. Like, that's it. That's all you need. You train with me one time. But I think people, they really lose sight of that. And just having that life checklist, I think, is going to be huge. And just having those things that are going to be good, because it all adds up. And sure, do I know that, like, if I'm going to buy organic food, do I know that there could be some farmers out there, organic farmers, that have sprayed some crap on it? And sure. But if I buy something else, is it more than likely to have some sort of pesticide or growth hormone on? Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Right. So
measure your risk.
Exactly. So it's just that risk assessment. But what do
I
you
think too,
go ahead? Yeah.
Just one thought on that is 2020 has definitely put us all in a very different mindset. Every single person in the world. So that's where we're not alone. Right? It's not your household. It's not your state, your country. It's the world has all been handed something that we can't control.
Yeah.
Right? There is one piece of that we can't control. So, I kind of started with my household because, we talked earlier that it's hard when kids don't have the capacity to sort of think through certain things at the level that you hope. And I have 3 teenagers at various ages, and this is a rough time for them. So I teach so often, what can you control? Let's only worry about the things we can control. So what about the virus can we control, if we're going to talk about that? So then we line up those things. Okay, now, do you have to worry about them anymore? No, because I know what to do. And I think that when we look backwards, and if we have a tendency to say, oh my gosh, things are so bad. Okay, are they? And when you talk about your checklist, put on there, what do you have control over? What on this list is good for you? Get more of it. What on this list is not good for you? Have less of it. whether that's phone calls with a friend who's been your friend for decades. They are so negative that they drag you down. Probably want to, back off a little bit.
Yeah.
And if you've already had the conversation and they don't change themselves, then you have to put yourself in a little bit better position for your own mental health. Because your mental health is tied to your physical health, and your physical health is tied to your longevity. So if I want to be around to see my children's children, then I need to take care of all of this now.
Yeah. And that's a very good point. And if they're your true friend and you're talking about trying to eliminate some of those friends, like they'll still be there, right? Like it's okay.
Yeah.
I didn't talk to you for 6 months. Like you were kind of a jerk and you were a downer for a while, so just didn't want to talk to you for a little bit. They'll still
wearing me out.
Yeah. You don't necessarily need to tell them. Just like afterwards, like yeah, depends on your relationship. But I think that's makes a lot of sense because a lot of people forget about those personal connections and the friendships, and sometimes they just hold on to it. And I believe that people come in and out of your life for periods of time. Sometimes they're there for years and a lifetime, and sometimes they're just there for a few months, and they all serve their purpose, and maybe it's just time to cut them off. I did the throat sign thing.
Yeah.
I didn't mean
like
didn't mean the that. Okay, just stop talking to them. Don't actually do something bad to them like that.
Thanks for the clarification.
Tangents. All right. So I have one last question for you. So why do you, and I'm assuming that you feel like this is the future, why do you feel like Neuvana could be the future?
So I think that first I'll put it in the context of neurostimulation and this type of technology. I think that is the future because, we live in an age where we have a generation of very discerning, very well-educated young people. We can argue all day long of which generations are educated and all, but the generation that is coming up now, they we know they have access to so much information. They're watching their grandparents age not so gracefully, and they want something better, which includes not ingesting everything that possibly can be good for you, right? So everything doesn't have to be a pill, everything doesn't have to be a drink or something like that. So I think it's important to note that neurostimulation, neuromodulation, and other types of interventions are so important for the future because people want less pharma, being very bold and saying, I want less pharma. I was a nurse for, I'm still a nurse, but, practicing in the hospital for as long as I did, there is value to medication, but I believe that as a culture, we move to it too quickly. So that's one piece, just in the technology. As a company, what we've done is we've developed a platform in our software that you can, let's say, University of Leeds, or let's say another university comes up with research and they say this particular electrical signal in this pattern is what's going to help you dance better. All right, I'll make it easy and fun. So, and would say, hey, we like that. We can upload it in a minute, put it on the app and send it to you, and you'll have it. And then everyone's got the waveform that'll help them dance better, faster.
Interesting. I need a lot of that waveform.
The dance waveform.
I am the stereotypical 6'3" white guy meathead. I mean, I can slow dance.
Nice.
Like I do well. Like, come here, honey, and we'll just
TikTok is your jam.
I have TikTok. I think I've got 3 videos on there. Just like there's too many things for me to handle now.
See, controlling your environment. I like it.
It is. So I literally have a friend who runs a very, very well-known celebrities account. And he's like, you need to get on TikTok. I'm like, dude, I don't. I don't have time. It's like, do you have videos? I can go in and edit them. Like, okay, if you're going to do that for free, maybe you can just throw all that up. But it's like shirtless in shape guys do so well on there. I'm like, oh man. Okay, great.
Okay.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, I mean, neurostimulation is really interesting. I mean, I had my brain mapped several times, and I've done all sorts of different things to try to make the most important muscle in my body stronger. And Nuvana is definitely one of the tools that I have in my toolkit, if you will.
Yeah, that's how I like to say it. I think we all just, we've already said throughout our conversation that it's not like there's a silver bullet. There's no one thing that's going to meet all your needs.
Yeah.
But there are tools that you need, some tools that you can buy, some tools you can just, read about and use. But, I think that this is a really good time to talk about stress, ways to manage it. If you can cut some of it out, cut some of it out. But most of all, really, really just pay attention. I think we can all do better for ourselves.
I like that. I like to end it on that. We can all do better for ourselves. All right, Amy, where can people find more about Nuvana?
At NeuvanaLife.com. So that's our website.
NeuvanaLife, NeuvanaLife.com. Use code Joey Thurman Fit. And then you guys are on social media as well?
Yes, we are. All NeuvanaLife hashtags.
Perfect. Well, thank you for coming on. Thank you for helping my brain, because we all know that I need a lot of help.
Well, thank you. This was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. And I don't think you need lots of help at all.
All right, I'm Joey Thurman. There's another episode of the Fad or Future podcast. Remember, don't be a fatty, Faddy. Be a part of the future everybody laughs about.